Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. Happy New Year to everybody. Good to see everybody here. We're back. It's 2024, which I cannot believe it's 2024. It turned like 2000 like 7 weeks ago or something. I don't know. This is amazing. So I'm going to jump right into some comments right away. This is weird. We got Wil Baptiste. Yes, Wil Baptiste is a guest this week. Interviewed him yesterday. He was gracious enough to give me a little bit of time from his home in Miami. And we'll play that video for you in a few minutes. And then what did this say? Violin tuner came with a pickup that I can't hook on. But, oh, the actual violin. Do I put it on the bridge? Yeah, I guess. I don't know which one you got. But generally, that's where that would go. Yeah, it would go on the bridge. So, anyway, we're back to here. And we are in our Effects on Violin series. We took a couple weeks off for Christmas, but we are back. This week, we're going to be talking about suboctave, which is a lot of fun. I love suboctaves, and Wil uses those a lot with Black Violin, which is why I reached out to him to talk about these things. But first, in this series, if you guys are, it's this way, Matt. Okay, good job. So if you guys are new to this whole thing, we're doing a series right now on effects for violin, and this is week 6. We talked about gain structure. We talked about, well, let's see. What did we talk about? Yeah, gain structure, EQ. We did 2 weeks on EQ because it's important. We talked about impulse responses. We've talked about compression, and this week we're talking about suboctave. And I try to get an artist on each one of these as I can, or if it makes sense to have an artist come in. By the way, I've got at least 10 more of these in the hopper. We'll be doing this for at least 10 more weeks, and I've got some really, really cool artists lined up to talk to you guys. I don't know which order we're doing these things in because most of these artists are super busy, and it's a matter of getting a few minutes with them to chat and then putting this chat together. So over the next couple months, we will be doing this Effects on Violin series as we go. And I'm really excited about this. It's a ton of work for me, but it's a lot of fun. And hopefully you guys are getting a lot out of this. By the way, check out this shirt. More violins, less violence. This is from the Trouble Notes, which are good friends of mine. They were in here just a few weeks ago. They were on tour from Germany. And yeah, so if you want this shirt, you just look up the Trouble Notes. And they've got them for sale. You can buy one, and they'll send it right to your house. It's amazing how online shopping, it's crazy. You can buy an electric violin through the mail. Mail order violins. Crazy talk. Anyway, so suboctave, what is it? Well, it's exactly what it says. We take your signal, and we shift it down an octave, or 2 if you get really crazy, which Wil does sometimes. Now, you'll notice that I didn't say shift the pitch. We often call it pitch shifting, but it's really more just signal shifting. It's not just pitch shifting, it's signal shifting. If you remember a few weeks ago in our EQ video, We talked about what these are. That's a snapshot of an RTA, a real-time analyzer. If you don't know what an RTA is, or this plot doesn't mean anything to you, highly recommend going back and checking out the EQ video. We'll explain what this is. But those two bars on the left for each one of these, the violin and the viola, those two bars are the fundamental. In this case, it's an open A at 440 hertz-ish. So that's showing the fundamental, the pitch. What your ear would recognize is, oh, that's an A, okay? Everything else, all those other bars are overtones that are, it's more frequencies that your instrument generates, and it's the difference. That's why the violin and the viola look different, because they sound different. Those are how your ear recognizes the instrument. Like an open A on a violin or viola would sound different than the same note from a trumpet or from a piano. And it's because that overtone series is different. With pitch shifting, it doesn't shift just the pitch. It doesn't shift just that fundamental frequency. It shifts the whole thing. So all the overtones, everything goes with it. So the bow noise, the sound of the wood of the instrument, all of that goes down an octave. And so if you're not careful, it can get a little dark. It can get a little woofy. It can get lost in the mix a little bit. So we just have to be aware that when we're pitch shifting, we're shifting all of our signal down, the overtones and everything. So that's important. The other thing to think about is the math. I know we don't like to think about math. We're musicians, like, oh my goodness, I got into music because I don't want to do math. Low C on a 5-string violin is about 130 hertz. When we go down an octave, we cut the frequency in half. If we go up an octave, we double it. So if we go an octave below 130, that's 65 hertz, okay? If we go an octave below that, we're like 32, 33 hertz. That's really low. The bottom of human hearing is 20. So we're getting down there near the bottom of human hearing if we go down 2 octaves from a C on a 5-string violin. We will get calls from people saying, hey, I got this octave pedal and it doesn't work. Like I plugged it in and I'm trying to play on my low strings and there's really nothing coming out of my speaker. There's really nothing. Well, the pedal works just fine. Your speaker cannot reproduce those frequencies. Now you can get the overtones out of that. You're like, yeah, I'm hearing like this muddy kind of floating around thing, but it doesn't sound like, yeah, that's right. The Fishman Loudbox Mini is an amp that we recommend for a lot of people. They list their bottom frequency as 80 hertz. And pretty much, honestly, no guitar amp is really rated for much below 80 hertz because guitars aren't making sounds down there. And your engineer is going to high pass it anyway. So if you really want that sort of chest rattling low end, you're going to need a subwoofer. Also, you're going to need to talk to your engineer because your engineer is almost certainly going to put a high pass filter on your signal, maybe as high as 2 or 250 hertz. If you really want some stuff rattling down around 60 hertz, you're going to have to let them know, hey, there's going to be a lot of low frequency stuff coming out of the signal, out of my channel at some point. Just FYI. How are we going to do this sub-octave thing? All right, you talked me into it. I want a sub-octave. How are we going to do that? Well, the way generally you're going to use a pedal, and let me grab one. There is a pedal here. This is a POG pedal. It's the same one that you're going to see Will talk about in a few minutes. Super, super common pedal for people to use. It's one that we carry. There are other pedals that you can use. They're all kind of different. We don't carry a lot of these other sub-octave pedals, but each one feels and sounds a little different. And then I want to make sure that if you're going to use these, if you're going to use pits or you can use double stops down there, you want to check these pedals. You want to check these pedals with double stops. You want to check them with pits because if there's a little bit of latency in there and you're doing some pits, it's going to feel kind of weird. It's going to be strange. So make sure you're trying them with the techniques that you're intending to use when you play. The other piece is when we talk about wet and dry, when I say wet means affected signal and dry means unaffected signal. So if I run this at 100% wet, it means that none of my original sound is coming through, just the affected sound. So the shifted pitch is what's going to come through, not my original sound. If I use like a 50% blend, it's going to sound like two instruments playing in octaves with each other. A lot of times I will actually use a 10 to 20% blend. If I say want 80% dry and 20% wet, there's just going to be a little tiny bit of sub-octave underneath there, maybe to sort of fatten the mix up a little bit. Or if I want to do a 10 to 20% wet, where the other way. So it's mostly the sub-octave. That's what I meant. It's 80% wet. So if I've got mostly the sub-octave coming through, but a little bit of my dry, that's going to add back some of those overtones that I lost when I shifted everything down, right? So I've got a video where you can hear a couple of different pitch shifters. Like I said, we only carry one or two at a time. Right now we've only got the Pog. So I hooked up my Helix, and you can hear a couple of the different pitch shifting algorithms in the Helix, including one that's intentionally not very organic. I think it's called the Bachtiver. The Bachtiver. Not Bach, but Bach, like bass octaver. It's actually a synth pedal. It's not supposed to sound clean, and it doesn't. But it's just kind of a cool way to do pitch shifting. But yeah, here's a video. It's about a minute long, and then we'll talk some more. So as you can hear, they all sound different. Each one of them uses a different algorithm for shifting that pitch down. And some of them sound more like a cello. Some of them sound more like I can hear some more higher frequencies in there, whatever. You're just going to have to decide which one sounds right to you for the application that you're trying to use it for. So there are a ton of different pitch shifters out there. And I wish there was an answer that I could tell you, use this one or don't use this one. You're just going to have to try them. And sometimes there's just not really a shortcut to just trying different things. And that's one of the things that Wil's going to talk about in our chat with him in a few minutes. Where to put these in your signal chain? I generally like to go really early, like first or second. So I would go instrument. If I'm using a preamp, I'd go instrument to preamp. And then from the preamp, probably right into my pitch shifter. I want it to be the cleanest possible signal going in there. If I've got a lot of other nonsense on that signal, the pitch shifter is going to get confused trying to figure out where to shift, and we don't need pitch shifters getting confused. That's bad. So I will usually put a pitch shifter, and then I will put my IR, my instrument body IR, and just be aware that the perceived loudness is going to be a lot lower than the actual loudness. So when I look at my meter, those low frequencies carry a lot of energy. They're going to be hitting that meter really hard, and you're going to go, wow, that's not nearly as loud as the unaffected signal. Well, it absolutely is. Your ear just doesn't perceive it that way. So you're going to have to kind of be aware with your engineer, checking to make sure that when I kick on my sub bass pedal, I'm not clipping out my channel. We've got to kind of work through all that ahead of time to check those gain structures to make sure that they're working right. Just be conscious that when you're shifting stuff down, perceived loudness is going to go down, actual loudness is going to go up. So you'll have to take that into account. On your suboctave with EQ, if it's 100% blend, which means 100% wet, all affected signal, if I've got a 5-string violin, I'm now all the way fully in cello range. I'm probably going to need to EQ that a little bit. Like I said, all your overtones are also shifting down. So I will use a high pass, and you're like, wait, you're trying to get lots of bottom end. Why would you high pass? Because all of the funk that my pickup generates, and your pickups do generate a lot of low end stuff that isn't really musical. The pickup doesn't know that that's not supposed to be a violin sound. It just, when the bow changes, it hears that thump. Well, the pitch shifter is going to move all that down even further. So it's going to be less audible, but it's going to take up more energy and space in your signal. So you're probably going to want to use a high pass to clean up some of the mud from that shift. And then you're thinking, well, I want some more highs in there to get some of these higher overtones back, which is great. But typically we will try to use subtractive EQ rather than additive EQ when we can. So one of the things that I would do is maybe pull out some mids, which is going to make the highs higher in comparison to the mids. That makes sense. If we've got mids and highs, and I pull my mids down, that means the highs are now higher in comparison. And then maybe you can boost some highs later on. But I always want to try subtractive EQ first, just because it's cleaner. So you might want to pull some mids out in order to get more of that high frequency to come through. Hope that all makes sense. I didn't talk very long on this one because I really want to get to this discussion with Wil. I'm going to let you guys, it's about 15 minutes where I'm chatting with Wil, and then we'll come back and I'll answer any questions you have. All right. So we're doing this series on effects, and we started, I don't know, well, I took a couple weeks off for Christmas, but 6 weeks ago in a series format, and we're going to talk about one effect every week and try to bring in some artists on different weeks to talk about how they use that effect. But we started with gain structure, which is not technically an effect, but if you don't have that right, it doesn't matter what else you do.
Right.
And then we talked EQ for a couple weeks. We talked compression, and now we're kind of getting into the meat of things now. And, you know, I've seen you use a lot of sub-octave pitch shifting with Black Violin. And I was like, man, I can't think of anybody better to talk to about sub-octave pitch shifting. You guys do this a lot and on some big stages with big PAs. So I'd love to get kind of your thoughts on pitch shifting and how you use it, and what are some things that you've learned? What are some gear that you like to use, and all that?
Yeah, I mean, pitch shifting just opens it up so much, you know what I mean? Like in terms of creating. There's a moment of our show that we freestyle. We're just creating, we're just making something up. And so basically when Kev is playing the violin, when he's soloing, I'm the bass. I'm the bass player. So that's kind of that's one way that I use it. And sometimes I will pitch shift my viola twice. So I use this typically when I pitch shift, right? And I don't know if you could see it, and it's been cool. I kind of I like using it. It's very responsive. I've never really had any issues with it, and I'll also use the Eventide. There's a Eventide has a few different pitch shift and in the preset, so I'll use that as well. Sometimes I'll use both at the same time to give me that almost that 808 type of vibe. So I use it a lot doing freestyle, or just even sometimes if I'm playing a song and I kind of want to almost mimic this cello type sound. What I'll do is I'll blend the sub octave with the dry signal. You know what I mean? I'll do that, and just really, I think for us, we really try to stretch the envelope, because when the crowd sees the viola and they hear what's coming out, and they're like, "Man, how's this guy making this thing sound like a cello or a bass?" You know what I'm saying? They just lose it. So we, whatever we can do to really stretch the envelope and just, make the crowd just go even crazy is what we do. And pitch shifting is one of the biggest things that I love to do. It's fun, you know what I mean? It's dynamic, it kind of creates a lot of depth sonically.
Because you guys don't tour with a bass player. It's violin, viola. You've got a keyboard now, DJ, and a drummer. So there's obviously there's some 808 and some bass parts that the DJ's working, but there's not any live bass playing on the stage, right?
There's not, and that's kind of on purpose. We used to tour with the cellist I used to play. He used to like use the octaver as well. But our keyboardist is also he plays the key bass as well. So we have, we have we have our bass covered in a lot of different ways. I'll play bass sometimes, and maybe Cav will do it. And we've been touring with our keyboardist for about, I would say, about 2 years now, and he provides a lot of the bass. So I don't use my octaver as much, but I still use it from time to time. Yeah, but it's that bass is really necessary, especially when you're creating, especially when you're freestyling, you're doing anything. That bass is necessary.
Yeah, I've seen you guys a bunch of times, and every time that freestyle is so cool. And it starts a lot of times with you just kind of working a bass line and then giving people ideas to work off of. And it just always sounds so good, especially with those subs popping in there.
Yeah, man, it's fun. It's my favorite part of the show because it's the moment when I get to just really let loose. It's the moment I really get to just play whatever. You know what I mean? And I like to start it off because especially with the bass, because it's so, when I shift down the octave and I start plucking with the bass sound, it's just so easy for me to come up with different ideas. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of fun.
Now, what have you discovered that you need to do in addition to the pitch shifting in order to make it sound right? Are you changing EQ or any compression settings too when you're shifting?
What I do is the dry signal is important for me. It's important for me to hear the my viola. You know what I'm saying? In addition to the actual sub. You know what I mean? Because to me, the having that dry viola signal just really adds to the tone of that bass. You know what I mean? It makes it a bit more natural. It makes it less kind of like it makes it sound less like a viola trying to sound like a bass. That makes sense. You know what I mean? So I do that. I don't do too much EQ, but I use a Eventide preamp that comes out of my wireless. So that's the preamp that I typically would use, and I've gone through so many different preamps. But that's the preamp that I use, and it's a really nice, warm, clean signal. And when I throw the octave on there, it makes it pop that much more. And the dry signal to me is something that I do, and it really normalizes it. It really brings the signal to like this natural sound.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we've talked about is that when you do an octave down pitch shift, it also shifts all the overtones down. So it can get where it's just super dark and it doesn't cut at all. And
Exactly.
so you're fixing that by leaving your dry sound. How much of your dry sound do you leave in usually?
Sometimes it'll be halfway. Sometimes it's either like 45%, you know what I mean? I still want the sub bass to really like be as prevalent, right? But that dry signal, I'll pump it up sometimes to 50% just to make sure that that signal it almost sounds like one signal, you know what I mean? And it really helps to kind of make that sound, the signal just make it sound natural, you know what I mean, as possible. And I also have this has a octave higher, like a higher octave or whatever. And I don't use it as much. Sometimes I use that when I'm doing distortion, because sometimes I would use this in conjunction with distortion. And I'm telling you, this with distortion with the octave lower, it's just like I don't know if you heard that song on our Take the Stairs album. What's it called? Lost in the Garden. That's That's
Oh
me
me yeah.
plucking. If
Okay.
yeah, if you listen to that, it's the octaver plus a distortion, some dry signal, and maybe a little bit of octave higher in there, and it just sounds really dynamic and big and just huge.
Yeah, it does. I love that sound, and I'd wondered how you guys had gotten that sound, and now I know.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's me plucking the viola. That's something I do on stage all the time, just goofing around. And when we started working on the album, it's something I just playing around, just being creative.
So where do you have your pitch shifter in your signal chain? Is it pretty early?
Let's see. It is. It's definitely before anything that has to do any reverb, anything like that. Let me see. I don't have my pedal system here because it's in storage somewhere. About to hit the road. But I typically have it like I'll have my preamp, then I'll have kind of like my distortion. Then I'll have the pitch shift. You know what I'm saying? Anything like a delay, like I'll have the delay and reverb after that. So that's kind of how I have it set up. Any like tremolo, anything like that, I'll have it kind of like after. But so I'll have it pretty early just because I want that signal to come through. I want it to be very like, very clean. So the pedal can pick it up. Especially
Especially
when
when
I'm using the Eventide. The Eventide sometimes it'll just drop the signal a little bit. So
So you've got the pitch shifting after the distortion. I've always done it before, and I was kind of meh about the results. I'm gonna have to try putting it after. I like that.
it works for me. I've never tried it before, but it could work too. For me, I just anything that deals with the signal, like for me, I have to because I know how the pitch shift works sometimes. Sometimes it's if it's coming after so much things that's happening, especially like if you're dealing with reverb, if you use a lot of reverb and delay and all of that, if you put the pitch shift after that, the chance of that signal kind of dropping out just for a second goes up. You know what I mean? So for me, I like to have that signal, and it's good. I think I'll even try putting it first. I'll put it like the preamp and maybe the pitch shift because I think it might be a little bit better. You know what I mean? But I've never had any issues with it coming after my distortion, so it works for me for now. So
Cool. And then have you tried, you've obviously experimented with playing double stops through different distortion or through different pitch shifting pedals. And is that how you ended up picking the Pog just because of the way it tracked and all that?
yeah, yeah, I think so. It's really responsive, and I've tried the other ones that I've tried. I can't remember the names of them. They all work, you know what I mean? I think for me, this has always been the one. I've never had any reasons to not use it. I got a few of these that I have. I have a few at home and it just works. You know what I mean? I've never had it just time out on me. So that's kind of why I do it. And I think they all have their own little quirks to them. And again, I think for me, something that just I don't like I don't like pitch shifts that has I need a pedal that just does what it does. I don't need it to do a bunch of different things unless maybe the Eventide, I use that as reverb and if I'm doing a little bit of effect. But I like to have a pedal that just does one thing, because I need it to do one thing and I want it to do it well. Because I've been in situations where you have a pedal and it does pitch shift, but it can also kind of, do all these different things and the signal and the sound takes a hit because of it, you know what I mean? So this is why I like this one. It's just really straightforward. There's nothing to it. Three buttons and does what it does.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you need it to be super reliable too. When I kick it, I need it to work every single time, and I don't need any problems.
Exactly. You know how it is on stage and I've been there where something just doesn't work, doesn't want to work, and luckily I've never really had any issues with this one. I've had issues with a lot of different other pedals, but it's been pretty solid though. I can't lie.
So if somebody's looking to find a sub octave pedal and they're like, how am I going to incorporate this into my rig? Maybe what kind of creative decisions would I make with this, or technical decisions? What kind of advice would you have for somebody?
Well, I would say just go to go to one of these music stores, go to the electric guitar violin shop and just pull out your violin or your viola or whatever you have and just plug it in and experiment and try these pedals out. Because I think this one works for me. It may not necessarily work for you. And to be honest, most of them kind of work similar. I have another octave that I have that it pitch shifts an octave lower, but it also can give you a third or a fourth above or below. So there's different pedals that do different things. I personally, I don't want my octaver to do anything else. I want it to do one thing, you know what I mean? So I think for anyone that's trying to get into this, just go to a music store, man, Guitar Center, Sam Ash, or anything like that, and just like bring your rig, just plug it up and just play with it. Trust me, that's what I do. Even till this day, if I'm on the road, I'll just bring my viola. I go to like Guitar Center and I just plug something up just to kind of like see what's out there. You know what I mean? See what kind of pedals I can mess with. And as a creator, that's what you have to do. Sometimes something may work for you, may not work for me, or vice versa. So I think that's the biggest thing the biggest suggestion I could give you is to just go and try it out. Just go and try it out and have fun with it. Be creative.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for joining us. I know you're super busy, and we appreciate you swinging by and all the support. So, where can people catch you guys? Where can they find out where you're going to be? And what you got any behind the scenes secrets that people are going to find out about what's coming at a Black Violin show real soon?
You could check us out at blackviolin.net. We're hitting the road the end of this month. I believe we're in Arizona on the 26th, somewhere in Arizona. I don't know. Check out the website blackviolin.net for any shows. But yeah, I think this year is going to be a lot of fun. I think you're going to see a lot of backstage stuff, you know what I mean? And for me, I love touring. I love what I do. So I just can't wait to get back on the road and check us out, man. We're in a city near you. We're in the West Coast, we're in the South, East Coast, we're everywhere, man, this year. So come check us out. Blackviolet.net.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys always put on a tremendous show, and it gets bigger and better every time I see it. I wish I could have been at the one in Durham this year. I was actually on vacation with Heidi, but I saw some video from that, and it was a killer show.
Thank you, thank you. We're always in Durham, so we'll be back.
So yeah, got a chance to hang with my buddy Wil, and they always do a fantastic job. He had some really killer insights on sub-octave pitch shifting, so we appreciate them um, being here. You guys got any questions that I can answer for you? Looks like some people got some good comments in here. Not any questions in particular, but I think it's pretty clear what sub-octave is and what it does. I guess I will go back. If anybody's new here, I will put in that demo video again, let you hear a couple of different shifting algorithms, and then we'll be back in 1 minute. Go ahead. Do we have any videos of an electric violin playing like on stage with a sort of rock band? Yeah, a lot. You can go to my personal YouTube page and find a bunch of those. Matt Bell Violinist is my YouTube page. There's a bunch of videos up there. Um, my friend Joe Denizone plays in Kansas. He's so any videos you see of Kansas is going to be him playing with a rock band. The Mark Wood band is built around Mark Wood, who's a rock violinist. Earl Manian plays with a band called Resolution 15. It's a rock band built around an electric violin. Rachel Barton Pine played in a heavy metal band called Earth and Grave. Lyris Hung played in a heavy metal band called Hung. Ben Karras plays in a prog rock band called Thank You Scientist. Sage Cornelius has a band that he plays in. Gosh, there's like so many. Yeah, there are lots and lots and lots of electric violins playing on stage with all kinds of rock bands. So, yeah. Tegan, fire away. All I got was this part of your question. I have a question, so just keep typing and we'll get to it. Yeah, great questions. Anybody got questions about pitch shifting or whatever? Happy to answer those. I don't know which effect we're going to be doing next week. Haven't thought that far ahead yet. but I'm sure we'll pick up a different effect next week and hopefully have another special guest for you next week. Here we go. What would be the price range for an electric violin? Yeah, so well, the price range is the same for you as it is for anybody else. Even if you're old like me, you pay the same price. So generally, you can find electric violins on eBay and Amazon and all that for pretty cheap. I wouldn't touch those for the reason that they break and they sound bad. The cheapest one that we sell is going to be around $750. And it's because we just haven't found any electric violins below that price range that we're willing to put our name on. So you're going to be looking at somewhere between 750 and about 6 or 7,000. So the price range for electric violins is a much more compressed price range than you would see for acoustic violins. And I'm going to get off of this screen right here. So generally with an acoustic violin, you could find them from $100 up to, I don't know, 20 million. And with the electric violins, that price range is compressed quite a bit. The cheapest electric violin, like I said, that I could recommend to you and be able to sleep at night is going to be about $750. And then one of the most expensive ones we're going to have is in $6,000 or $7,000, somewhere in that range. So, yeah. Oh, let's see. Amps and octave dropping issues. Yeah, absolutely. So depending on what amp you're plugged into and how far you're dropping your signal, not every amp is really designed to handle those low frequencies. And it's different with a bass or a guitar than it is with a violin. With a bass or a guitar, I don't even know if this thing's in tune, but they pluck it, right? You've got that kind of sound. So you've got a transient and then it's got a pretty big drop. With a violin, if you're bowing, there's a really sustained push into that amp, and it's going to make it react a lot different than if you've got that, right? So a lot of amps, even if they could handle a bass or a guitar at that frequency, the violin with that constant push with a pitch shifter, yeah, you could have what we kind of call the moose fart sound down there that's going to boom, and you might hear the speaker even flapping. You're going to get that kind of sound in there that you're trying to avoid. It's going to sound like a moose fart. Yeah, bass amps actually, this is a good thing to talk about. Bass amps actually work great with electric violins, even if you're not talking about pitch shifting. What people think about bass amps, oh, it's the low frequencies of a bass. Basses have a lot of high frequencies too. When they're pulling that thing with their fingers, you get a lot of fret noise, and there's a lot of sort of the attack of a bass guitar is a high frequency sound. So a lot of people wouldn't think to plug an electric violin into a bass amp, but they do. They work great. They are typically voiced a little different than guitar amps are. And where the meat of the power of a bass amp is in a place where we don't often go sonically. But yeah, you can use a bass amp. They tend to be heavier. They tend to be bigger. So that would be one reason to not use a bass amp. But yeah, one of the best sounds I ever got was plugged into about a $6,000 bass rig. And for $6,000, you would hope it sounded good. And you know what? It did. It did sound good. Joseph Shackelford's here. What's up, buddy? Good to see you. Would I typically, or at least recommend, using a cello IR with a sub-octave, going for a clean tone? Yeah, it's exactly what I do, actually. I will run my violin into the pitch shifter and then out of the pitch shifter into a cello IR. And so you've shifted the violin down an octave to put it from a fundamental frequency standpoint. Now I'm down into cello range. And when I put that cello IR on it, it's money, dude. They sound really nice. I actually just recorded all the strings on an album that my church put out. I scored and recorded all the strings on this album using my Viper. And it's an all acoustic string sound. It was all done with my Viper, except there was one part where the cello was very, very, very exposed. And we had Shauna Tucker from our shop come in and record that on an actual cello. But stuff that's in the mix, oh my goodness, yeah. Using a pitch shifter, or I was actually using a 7-string violin with an IR. But yeah, I mean, you can't tell in a mix. You cannot tell that that's a Viper and not not an actual cello. A bass busking amp. Yeah, you can. I don't know if there are any. I know we like this one. This is a great busking amp right here, the Bose S1 Pro. The new one is really kind of pretty sexy, to be honest with you. But this is a battery-powered amp, and you can use this, and it's got quite a bit of booty in there. There's a pretty significant amount of low end, because you know Bose they like that bottom end. They like the high end, and they like the bottom end. There's not a lot of low mids in a Bose system. It's a very distinctive sound. Bose systems have a very distinctive sound. Lots of sparkly highs, lots of kind of thumpy bottom end, not a ton of low mids. But you know, it's a good sound. It's a sound that people like. I actually like the Bose. I own 2 of those, so like those a lot. There are a number of new products out there for busking that are fantastic. I haven't had a chance to try all of them. But we've got one in our shop now. It's an Acous amp. Those Acous amps are amazing, by the way. They sound incredible. And this Acous amp, I think it's called One for Street. And you can take some Makita batteries too, like the Makita Power Tool batteries. I don't know why I just did that. I was just thinking about a saw. So if you got your circular saw, and then you take the battery off the circular saw, you can put it in, literally, you can take the Makita battery and put it inside this Acous amp and run it off of battery. We've got somebody in the shop right now. You might have heard them playing in our front room. But she was trying out some stuff on this Acous amp. And my description of the Acous amp, you know, when you go to a hotel and they've got that mirror in the bathroom that's like the concave mirror, and it's a makeup mirror, and you can see your face like really, really magnified. You're like, holy crap, I didn't know I looked like that. I'm sorry, everybody. I didn't know you had to look at me like this. No, people don't see you like that. It's, you know, you can see every pore in your face. That's what this Acous amp is. It sounds so accurate and so high fidelity and so crisp and clean. It's kind of like one of those makeup mirrors. It's like, if you're really beautiful, that makeup mirror is going to make you look really good. If you look more like me, that makeup mirror is going to make you want to jump out a window or something. So the Acous amp sounds incredible. The fidelity, the clarity is, the reproduction is perfect. It's really, really good. If you're a good player and you have a good sound, that's wonderful. If you're not a good player or you don't have a good sound, maybe not ideal, because there's no place to hide with that amp. It is extremely accurate. So, you know, if you're Ross Holmes loves that thing because he sounds amazing, and it makes him sound even more amazing, because an amp that's a little bit forgiving, kind of it's hiding some of the amazing things that he's doing. Whereas for me, one of those less accurate amps, it's like it gave me a place to hide. That was really nice, thank you. And this Acous amp is not giving me any place to hide. So that's kind of what's going on there. That's a side note. That's what we say. It's a non sequitur. But we were talking about busking amps, so it kind of came up. Any other questions before I dive on out of here? No more. If you guys are new here, check out this shirt. It's from my buddies at the Trouble Notes in Germany. Trouble, like someone who's in trouble. Notes, like the things you play on your instrument. So Trouble Notes, yeah. Do I give concerts in Colorado? I will play on the moon if the money's right. I was in Vermont last weekend. I will be in LA in a couple weeks. I'm in New York a lot. Chicago. Yeah, I mean, I'll play on the moon if the money's right. So I don't generally play Colorado very often, but sometimes. I know Mia Asano is going to be out there at some point with Mia and Allie. If you don't know who Mia Asano is, you should check her out. MIA ASANO. So she's going to be out there, I think, with her partner, Allie, who's a bagpiper. So electric violin and bagpipes, it's peanut butter and chocolate. It's the thing we didn't know we wanted until we got it. And we were like, oh, that's amazing. Thank you for doing that. Mia is actually from Colorado, and I think she's got some dates out there this winter or this spring. So yeah, go see her for sure. Also, if you're in Colorado and you want to check out some amazing violinists, Z Crane with her band Wicked Vixen plays out in Colorado a lot. I would definitely look her up. She's an incredible Viper player and singer and songwriter. And then Vi Wickham is a good buddy of mine who plays out there. He's kind of a roots, I guess, violinist. Vi is amazing. V.I. Wickham. And Andy's actually going to be in India and China or something. But Andy Reiner is an amazing fiddle player out of Colorado. Check him out for sure. Are our violins expensive? I feel like we just answered this. The lowest end violin we have is in the $750 range, and highest end is around $7,000. So in the violin world, they're crazy cheap. I was just talking to somebody about that the other day. Like the most expensive instrument we carry is around $7,000. And there's a lot of like acoustic violin shops. A $7,000 violin would be like a low intermediate. A good acoustic violin starts at about 5 figures and goes up from there. So yeah, it always cracks me up when people are like, those electric violins are so expensive. I'm like, oh, wait till you try to buy an acoustic violin. So yeah, these are much less expensive than a good acoustic violin. I mean, you can buy a student acoustic violin for just a couple $100, but something that you're going to try to make some money on is going to be more. Yeah, these are incredibly affordable for compared to acoustic violins. Yep. So yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. Great questions. Hope that you were able to hear a little bit about suboctaves from me and from Wil, and hopefully you know a little bit more about pitch shifting than you knew 43 minutes ago or 47 minutes ago, whatever it was. So awesome. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll do another effect next week and look to see you then. All right.